Good evening and greetings, everyone. Welcome to Ghost Education 101 tonight. I'm one of your hosts, Heather Leigh, and I'm joined by my co-host, Philip. How are you doing today, Philip?
I'm great. I'm glad you made it tonight.
Yes, and we are excited. We have an amazing guest. He is a return guest on Ghost Ed, Steve Dills from Transcend Paranormal, and he has rumor has it, he has a fantastic presentation to share with us tonight.
He always has so much great information, and he's so generous about sharing everything he knows and everything he's learned over the years. So I'm sure whatever he tells us is going to be amazing.
Exactly. So I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm going to bring him in so we can get started. Welcome to the show, Steve.
How's it going? You guys are setting the bar way too high for me. I like to set it really low. I try to keep it as low as possible. Yeah, let's start over. Listen, you get a trash guest tonight. It's going to be horrible.
Some dude that we found that didn't have anything else to do.
We needed a guest, and I was walking down the road in the city, and I found this guy.
He said he liked ghost stories, so here he is.
And here we are. Here we are now.
And he's got great red lights in his room, so.
I do. I gotta set the vibe, get the vibe
dude,
going and everything.
You're talking to me?
Yeah, I know exactly.
It's all about the vibe.
And then I could just I could tell she who shall not be named to change the colors and everything, so make party colors and everything. Yeah,
yay! It's a party.
Yeah, we have fun, man. Oh, thank you, Thomas. my red light special, buddy.
Not to be confused with the red light district. Now let's keep it PG.
That's later tonight.
That's the after show.
That's actually where they found me.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna say it, but
Oh boy, this is just water. This is just water.
My wine is I sent my boys out to the store to get wine for me, so I haven't started yet. But after the day I've had at work today, I definitely need it.
My dogs can't fetch my wine.
But we already do have a lot of people popping up in the comments real quick. We have Bob, as always. Welcome to the show, Bob. And
how's it going, Bob?
Anton's watching from YouTube.
Yay.
Jerry is here. Sandra's looking forward to tonight.
My teammates.
Heidi's here.
Hi, Heidi.
Thomas has joined us.
Yeah, look at him. He's angry.
And Michelle.
Groovy.
Thomas always heckles me.
Oh, everybody share the stream. Get all your buddies who are sitting home alone.
So if Thomas starts heckling you, I'm not to delete him, right? I'm just to let him go on.
Just let him heckle. Yeah, I always enjoy a good heckle. So I feel like it keeps it lively.
We've had some in the past that just got way too out of hand, and I ended up blocking them. So.
Oh no, Thomas is good. Thomas and I are very good.
Great. Heckling that you can't even understand what they're saying, I don't like. It's like, what?
I mean, I enjoy a good heckle. I don't know. I find a lot of humor in it, and so I am always down for a solid heckle. And Thomas is my wingman, and he always comes in and joins me and helps heckle. So
yeah, good. Glad I checked that beforehand because
Thomas about to get banned from the channel.
And I've actually had people who message me on my other channels, and they're like, "I'm sorry if I offended you," and I'm like, "Well, you shouldn't say that about my guest."
Oh my gosh,
man!
Oh, so what do you have for us today, Steve?
So tonight, we are gonna chat about a little topic that is near and dear to my strange heart. It is a little bit outside of the realm of I guess your typical ghost hunting and paranormal investigating. So, for those of you that are here for Ghost Education 101, you will actually get some of that. So fret not. However, it is a little bit of a detour. We're gonna take the scenic route into the paranormal this evening. So it'll be a little bit different and off the beaten path than what you have before. However, I found this to be a very refreshing topic. I actually had zero intention of doing a presentation or any research on this location or on this topic in general. And it wasn't until a friend of mine who hosted the EnigmaCon Paracon at St. Albans Sanatorium, Angie. She had asked me to come and chat because she loves me, when I do my lectures and stuff. And she basically said, "Hey, I don't want to do the normal stuff." She said, "I will give you, I'm giving everybody a topic. I know you're going to come up with something unique. However, I did pick out a topic that I thought might be interesting to you." And I said, "You know what? Sure, let's do it. Like I'm down for a challenge. I'm excited." And so she gave me this topic, and I started digging and diving. And the very first thing that I kind of clung to was the paranormal aspect of this, because that's just, I guess, natural or preternatural for me. Um, and so, so I started digging, kind of into the preternatural point. That's where I started, and then little while later, unbeknownst to me, here I am just kind of unpacking this entire location of what you would consider high strangeness. There's just all these sorts of things going on, and I don't know. It just became a very humbling and exciting experience where I got to reevaluate my view of the paranormal, and hopefully that will kind of challenge everybody's views a little bit tonight, and kind of hopefully make them take a step back and evaluate everything and question everything.
Sounds like a lot of questions we're going to be thinking about.
That'd be good. Yeah. I'm excited. Yeah, if you guys have questions, throw them in chat. Please feel free, because I'll at least see the Facebook ones. Let me see. Can I see the? Oh yeah, I can. I can see the YouTube ones too. So cool, perfect.
Yep.
But yeah, so that's a little tidbit without giving away too much.
Giving it all away.
Yeah. And then real quick, for anyone who is listening to this later on WDJ, is it NY or
WDJY?
WDJY. I know you guys cannot see the presentation that's happening, and if you guys do want to see the presentation, you could go to our YouTube channel at Ghost Education 101 and then search for the topic with Steve Dills. That will be there for you guys to watch if you want to actually see what's going on behind the scenes here.
And the nice thing is, I built this presentation out so the pictures, the deck, the slideshow, are pictures just as points for folks like me with undiagnosed ADHD, so that I have something to look at, to keep me focused. But if you don't need that, don't need to look at the presentation. So I kind of built it so that folks could listen.
Excellent.
And real quick, one quick question before we get started. Michelle wants to know, have you ever had an X camera pick up on a speaker electricity?
I'm not entirely sure what an X camera is. However, I will tell you that I have had some of the microphones that I've worked with in the past, especially some of the lower end Rode mics, will pick up a little bit of the electricity, like that hum, and it will also pick up Wi-Fi signals. So if you do have a very strong Wi-Fi network in the environment that you're filming in, if you're using kind of one of their like, I can't remember. It's not the Pro, but I think it's just the Rode Go. It's just the shotgun mic that sits on top. I had to upgrade to the Pro because when I was going into some of these locations that had Wi-Fi, all I heard was a hum. So I have picked up some electricity.
Okay. And then this will be the last question before we get started. Nancy wants to know, she missed the intro and the info. Where are we all located? We're actually a little all over the place.
Yeah. Got a couple Southerners.
Yep. I'm here in Southwest Florida.
Atlanta, Georgia.
And I am in Virginia with my son right now.
It's not an apparition of a child. It's an actual real child. Oh my
Nobody
gosh.
minds, but
He's so cute.
He's grown
regardless
up
of the
fast.
fact that we are well past our bedtime. Yeah, I know. You always see him in the background of one video. He is. He's getting big, man. It's killing
Yep.
me. I'm like, I want him to stay a little baby. Like my daughter is 8 going on 18, and he's
Oh
still
boy.
young. And
I remember when you guys announced that you did the Hershey thing. I think it was when you announced that you guys were pregnant.
yes, we
Yeah.
did do the Hershey thing. All right, give me a hug. Good night. Come here.
Aw.
Oh, big man. I love you. Do you want to say hi? Do you want to wave?
Hello.
Woo! All right, go
Look
lay
at
with
those
mama.
dimples.
He likes to look at himself on the screen.
I know.
No one is ever in Minnesota, girl, because it is too cold in
Yep.
Minnesota. You are not finding me in Minnesota. Okay.
Oh
go ahead.
well. Yeah,
Lovely
I'm
state.
in Virginia, and I like Virginia. It's fun because there's a lot of history and a lot of things to explore.
Yeah.
And where I am, it's about 2 hours to the mountains, 2 hours to the beach. So it's like that perfect little spot.
Yep.
I can see everything that I want to. So.
All right, I'm going to mute and you go for it.
Yep. And just let me know. I'll flag all the questions so we can get to them later on, or whenever you're ready to get to the questions. Just let me know.
Okay. I mean, whenever we can throw them in there. They don't matter. All right. So let's get started. Let me find where's my little slide deck. Here it is. So we're gonna start off kind of with a little question, or I guess an interesting idea. When I started researching the topic that we're about to speak about, I found this very interesting quote, or an idea, and it was posed by world-renowned physicist Mikio Kaku. And Heather probably knows who that is because Heather knows everybody. And so Kaku posed this idea. Let's say that there's a 10-lane superhighway built next to an anthill. Would the ants know what a 10-lane superhighway is? Do they know what it's used for? Do they know how to communicate with the workers that are mere feet away from the anthill? Would they even be aware of its presence? Now, I know in Atlanta, you're probably aware of all of their presences, Philip, for all of the superhighways that you get.
I'm going to say that's just down the street from me.
Yeah, you're like I see that out my front window.
That's the intersection down from my house. Except there's no cars on those roads, and like here. But anyway,
I know. They must have done this really early in the morning or something. But the idea is posed, right? Do we think that these ants that are their entire life is right here in this very tiny little spot, would they be able to even, I guess, feasibly understand what this is, what its purpose is? Probably not, right? Spanish physicist Beatriz Gato Riviera posed a very similar question. Could a family of mountain gorillas be aware that they are a quote unquote protected species inhabiting a natural reserve in a country inside the African continent of planet Earth? Furthermore, would they be aware of nations, borders, religions, politics, or even their own position within the planetary pecking order? Hi, Ronnie. How are you, buddy? Are they aware of even something as simplistic as the sheer awe and beauty of the world that surrounds them? Probably not, right? I mean, I don't know about you, but I have not heard of any country that has ever sent delegates to meet with the mountain gorillas, to shake hands, introduce themselves, exchange signatures, kiss babies. I have not. Now, we might have scientists go out there and explore that, but by no stretch of the imagination have we ever done anything where we have tried to connect with these gorillas, right? Not in a way that we are recognizing them and saying, yes, this is this is your place. So keep that in mind, these two examples, as we move into this presentation. All right, because we're going to stop with these two questions, and we're going to come back to them very far towards the end. So first off, just to introduce myself, my name is Steve Dills. I'm the director of Transcend Paranormal. I am also an investigator and historian for the Paraflix TV show, The Ghost Finders. You can also find that on the Spirit Channel on Roku and online now. I am the former president of the Hanover Tavern Foundation here in Hanover County, Virginia. I am also a co-host of the YouTube uh, series, potato quality series, known as Eerie Encounters. My co-host Chris Vaughn and I do very interesting investigations. Um, I'm a nerd, and as you can see here, I have a wonderful wife and two beautiful kids, one of which you guys saw just a little bit ago. Um, now, fun fact: that is me in the middle in that T-Rex outfit. That was at one of the very first Fleetwood Paracons. One of the other founders of the Paracon is in the T-Rex outfit on the right-hand side of the picture, careening into a ravine. Um, not going to say any names, but he may or may not have been pushed, and I may or may not have won. So, so just throw that out there. No, no, it was fun. It's a big fundraising thing. Um, what better way to figure out and to feel familiar with folks than to share about some things that we like and we dislike. Things that I like include talking, usually debating, and per my wife, I love to complain. So that is apparently a pastime and a hobby. Things I don't like: giving speeches and losing arguments with my wife. Now, I do say that seriously and in jest. As Voltaire once said, is there anyone so wise as to learn by the experience of others? Right. And so basically, the way that I interpret and take that is it's only by communicating with each other and sharing ideas and thoughts that we learn and grow. So I always like to share this every time for this presentation. At any time, feel free to stop me and let's chat. Type it in chat and let's talk about things. I don't like to talk at people. I like to talk with people. So I don't really envision this as a forum or a lecture. I like to consider this a discussion. I like to chat with people and learn from everybody. A little bit about my team. Transcend Paranormal was founded in about 2010. We were actually about 30 members today strong, which is a very large team compared to most. But we focus on taking the kind of the different routes of paranormal investigating. Right, we have the scientific, we have kind of the metaphysical and historical, and we try to use all three of those to get a really ideally a big picture of the paranormal, right? We partner with historical locations to help fundraise for those locations as well. And so some of these locations, hopefully, you guys are familiar with. A lot of these are in Virginia, but we raised so far, kind of in our tenure, I guess, as investigators, probably somewhere around 400,000, if not more, dollars. And that is money that goes to these various different locations. 100% of the proceeds go directly to them. So fun little way to give back to the community. And these are kind of some of the pictures of different events that we've hosted over the years. And so it's a blast. We bring a lot of folks together. It's all fundraising. So every dollar, every penny goes to the historic location or location that we're working with. So it's all for a good cause. So now let's get in. Let's dive in a little bit here, right? Tonight, we're going to talk about something that isn't the as adrenaline pumping side of the paranormal. Uh, Typically, we do this quietly, alone at night, maybe sometimes in pairs if you're feeling a little frisky. And I'm talking about researching. All right, so Philip, please wipe that smirk off the old face there. I see. See, we were careening for the gutter. Uh, now we're talking about researching, right? We like to talk about our own stories, those undeniable interactions with the unknown that we ourselves have had. But what about others? What about their stories and their experiences? Can we utilize others' experiences along with our own to build a deeper understanding of the metaphysical world around us? So here's the interaction part. And we'll just pretend that people are raising their hands, because there's always a mix of folks that raise their hands when I ask this. But my very first question is, who here believes in ghosts or spirits? And so there's Philip. Thank you. Heather does not believe in ghosts or spirits. She's not raising her hand. Um, what about aliens? Philip did. Heather does not believe in aliens either. Oh, she does. Okay, Sasquatch. And lastly, who believes I've actually won an argument against my wife? I have not. I have not actually ever won an argument against my wife. So tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to discuss a topic that demands an open mind to the limitless possibilities that constitute our very own reality. All right. So we're going to take all of our preternatural packaging, right? Everything that we know. We always like to take all of these little, I guess, portions of the paranormal, right? We take ghosts and we put it in one box, and then we take spirits or demons, we put that in another box. We take cryptids, aliens, extra dimensions, UFOs, whatever. We always put these in different boxes, and we say, okay, well, these are where this belongs. This is the experience that I've had. You know what? This was UFOs. It's going to go over here. This was a cryptid. It's going to go over here. These are two very different boxes, right? But tonight, what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to take all of that packaging, dump it all over the floor, right? Get rid of all those neatly categorized boxes, toss it into a big pile. Because what we're going to do is we're going to discuss and enter a location that exemplifies the term high strangeness. Again, usually I ask folks where they think that we're heading tonight. But because we're just on chat, we're going to go ahead and move forward. And so on the screen is a picture of a plot of land that is in the Uinta Basin. It is a little known place called Skinwalker Ranch. Or you may know it as one of the million other names: the Sherman Ranch, UFO Ranch; Bigelow Ranch, Nid's Mystery Ranch; Skinwalker Ridge, UFO Hill; Paranormal Ranch, Haunted Ranch, and more. I cannot tell you how many different names I found for this location when doing my research. It has been called, I swear, everything under the sun. And so for the duration of this presentation, we're going to call it Skinwalker Ranch, but just be aware that it has a plethora of names. All right, it is crazy the amount of just names. Fill in ranch, ridge, hill, whatever, and then any spooky name at the very beginning, and you probably were referring to Skinwalker Ranch. Reports of preternatural phenomena span back generations upon generations in the Uinta Basin as a whole. All right. The Ute Native American reservation stands close by, and for generations, this whole area was and has been and is home to the Ute tribe. The Utes are a knit and lip tight tribe who rarely share their stories and experiences to outsiders. Right. In fact, they typically don't talk about it internally either. Talking about something like this typically, you know, lends to the idea of, if I'm talking about it, I'm giving it energy. I'm willing this to occur, and so they typically don't share these stories all that much. However, some have claimed to have experienced phenomena stretching back over 15 generations in the area. Now, the name Skinwalker Ranch doesn't come from the Utes or the ranch itself. It actually comes from the Navajo and the mesa above. The Skinwalker. This name comes from the Navajo tribe. A Skinwalker, or I'm about to absolutely butcher this, Ye Naldlushi. And what that means is, with it, he comes on all fours, or he goes on all fours. It's a malevolent witch capable of transforming into a wolf, coyote, bear, bird, or any other animal. They can use mind control to make their victims harm themselves. They can run faster than a car and jump mesa cliffs with no effort. Now, while occasionally allies, the Navajo and the Ute tribes have a much longer history of war. According to many, the Utes believe that because of such a tumultuous history between the two tribes, it actually led to the Navajo putting a curse on the tribe in retribution for many perceived aggressions in the form of a skinwalker. Now, the youths don't believe that a skinwalker lives on the ranch, but that it does walk on the ridge directly adjacent to the ranch. And so, for those of you that have watched the TV show, you always see them, working on that mace on that ridge. That is what this is referencing. The ranch and portions of the basin nearby are considered off limits to the Ute tribe, and Utes typically refuse to set foot onto what they consider this cursed land. So when I started digging into this, I wanted to try to go back as far as possible. I have seen the middle one in Tinder. I like it, Philip. I love it. Did you slide right or left though? Which way did you go with that one, Philip?
I'll never tell.
I like it. So I tried to go as far back as possible, right? And what I found is that most of the stories known from the ranch begin with the Sherman family in 1994. All right, so this is where we get a lot of our history and our preternatural phenomena. Um, I guess experiences and occurrences that are actually documented. All right. So Terry and Gwen Sherman purchased the land from longtime owners Kenneth and Edith Myers. All right. They lived there from 1934 to 1994. So 60 years, by the way. All right. 60 years. The majority of experiences documented originate from the Sherman family. And it was actually through the Sherman family that it gained international attention. Claims of preternatural experiences first appear in 1996 in the Salt Lake City, Utah Deseret News, and later in the Las Vegas Mercury. They were presented by a series of articles by investigative journalist George Knapp. So, for any of you that watch the news or CBS or anything like that, you probably know who George Knapp is. He covers a lot of kind of fringe topics, and you'll actually see him pop up quite frequently uh, in not only this presentation, but in other kind of, I guess, fringe science, preternatural phenomena stories. So George here starts writing articles in the newspapers, right? And this kind of piques the attention of not only the community but the country, right? People start getting interested in what is Skinwalker Ranch, what's going on here. In particular, it catches the attention of the gentleman here on the right, Robert Bigelow. Now, Bigelow here is an American businessman. He owns a hotel chain, Budget Suite of America. And in 1995, he founded NIDSCI, National Institute for Discovery Science. Please note that this is not a government organization. It did receive funding from the government, but it itself is not a government organization. NIDSCI was founded to research and advance the serious study of various fringe science and paranormal topics, most notably ufology, right? The study of UFOs. George's article catches the attention of NIDSCI, and they purchased the ranch in 1996 to the tune of $200,000. All right. So they purchased it in 1996. Keep in mind that the Sherman family has only lived there for 3 years at this point. Prior to that, the previous owners lived there for 60. That's quite a little bit difference in time. Now, a little bit of interesting things around Bigelow here. He's the founder of Bigelow Aerospace, which was founded in 1998. It was funded by his ownership of the hotel chain. NIDSCI was disbanded in 2004. He also founded something called Bigelow Aerospace that closed in March 2020, reportedly due to COVID, with intentions to reopen when conditions permitted. It is still not open to this day. When Bigelow gains access to this property after he purchases it, he immediately starts sending in investigators. All right. And so, deputy administrator of the investigation is Dr. Colm Keller, and accompanying a slew of scientists and researchers is also a very similar face, George Knapp. Together in 2005, Dr. Kelleher and George Knapp co-author the book Hunt for the Skinwalker, which documents various claims from the Sherman family as well as various NIDSCI investigations on the property. It is a very interesting read. I have it somewhere on my bookshelf. I don't know where it is. However, it is an interesting read. So if you have the opportunity, I would highly suggest picking it up, just to kind of get a glimpse of what's going on at Skinwalker Ranch, especially if you enjoy the TV show. This kind of gives you a little bit of beforehand. All right. So interest peaks again, right? This book uh, just catches on fire, and folks are buying it left and right. Everybody is interested, and so the property is sold yet again in 2016 to a shell corporation of unknown origin known as Adamantium Holdings for $4.5 million. That's a lot of money, regardless of inflation. To go from 200,000 to 4.5 million is a significant stretch. All right. So Adamantium Holdings purchases the property for $4.5 million, and immediately a perimeter is set around the property. It's secured with guards, cameras, barbed wire, you name it. All roads in are blocked. In 2017, the name Skinwalker Ranch is filed for trademark, which was finally issued in 2018. In 2020, after 2 short years, an announcement is made by Brandon Fugel, the gentleman to the left here, who is a Utah real estate tycoon, that he is in fact the owner of the ranch and this mysterious corporation. It is fun to note, however, that Fugel is also a huge fan of Marvel, and apparently Wolverine, because adamantium is the metal that is covering Wolverine's what are those like claws and everything in his bones and stuff. I'm a Marvel nerd too, so when I saw that, I was like, yeah, I know exactly what that is. So he announces that in 2020, right, beginning of 2020. In March of the very same year, the TV show The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch begins airing on the History Channel. All right, so this man knew exactly what he was doing, right? When he purchased it in 2016, filed a trademark for Skinwalker Ranch in 2017, and then took 2 years to begin filming and documenting everything going on. There was a very clear intent and purpose, as far as I'm concerned, as to how this would play out, right? This was going to make it onto TV. So when I started investigating Skinwalker Ranch, obviously the very first thing that kind of grabbed my attention was the paranormal aspect, right? So let's go back to the Shermans. Gwen and aw, thanks, Paul. Uh, Gwen and Terry immediately start having these paranormal experiences when they first move into the ranch, right? Um, Particularly and specifically Gwen. Gwen starts hearing things, voices, footsteps, and more inside the home that they're living in on the property. Objects begin vanishing and reappearing or reorienting. One common occurrence was the salt and pepper shakers would switch. The salt mysteriously would uh, all of a sudden be inside of the pepper shaker, and the pepper in the salt. On a few occasions, Gwen would come home with groceries. She'd put her groceries away. Minutes later, she'd walk away, go do something else. Minutes later, come back into the kitchen, and all of her newly purchased groceries would once again be in their bags on the counter. Talk about frustrating. I hate putting away groceries. Like that is up there with doing laundry. I hate laundry. The most frequent activity, however, that would occur on the ranch was the sighting of orbs. While many colors were witnessed, blue seemed to be the prevailing color. They would appear over the cattle, in the fields, over trees, directly outside of the house, inside of the house, and everywhere imaginable. Late one night, three of the Shermans. Paul, ditto. I know. Dude, I hate. I can't stand laundry. I'm sorry. Late night, late one evening, three of the Sherman dogs see one of these blue orbs approaching the house. Snarling, they chase in after the orb into a thicket. They make a loud yelping sound and then deafening silence. Terry, fearful of leaving the house, called for his dogs for hours on their porch until he fell asleep. In the morning, he makes his way towards the thicket and he crawls under, and just inside, he finds three charred masses. His dogs are never found. And so this brings me to the next kind of topic that when I started reading about this, right? These dogs that to me, for all intents and purposes, were killed, we fall onto mutilations. Uh, Cattle mutilations, in particular, on the ranch, and cattle mutilations have been around for quite some time. Wow, hot dog, Thomas is horrible. That's so bad. Cattle mutilations have been around for some time. The earliest known documented outbreak of unexplained livestock death occurred in 1606 in London and the surrounding shires. The report stated that whole slaughters of sheep occurred, in some places up to 100 sheep. Nothing was taken from the sheep but their tallow and some inert parts. The carcass and the fleece remained. So, the arguably most expensive piece, right? The piece that you probably want to take and sell. As most of the Midwest, Utah was no stranger to this horrible phenomenon. In the 1970s, waves of ranchers began finding their cattle mutilating, including here in the Uinta Basin, which is one of the many catalysts, by the way, of the Sagebrush Rebellion. Throughout the time that the Shermans and the Nids owned the ranch, a number of cattle mutilations did occur and were reported. In one instance, the mutilation occurred in broad daylight, only a few hundred yards away from the family. Terry had brought in a new calf, right, or actually a couple of new calves, and he began tagging them. Approximately 40 minutes, pass by after he's tagging them, with the ear tag, and he's off doing something else, and he hears his dogs start snarling and barking towards the field that these new calves are in. So he goes to check on the cattle. What he finds is that one of the calves has been strewn out in the field. Each leg rested about 10 feet away from the torso. Interestingly enough, not a single drop of blood was found. The only markings on the cow was on the ear, where that tag had been removed cleanly by a very, very sharp instrument. So this was not a mutilation in the sense that an animal had performed this, right? Something had killed this animal, cut off each of its legs, and strewn them 10 feet away from the body, uh, and drained it completely of blood. This was common throughout the ranch. Time and time again, they would stumble upon cattle that had been mutilated and missing body parts, mainly eyes, ears, and occasionally any other parts of the cow. Not one time did they find blood. And oftentimes, immediately prior or after this event, bright blue orbs would be reported floating through the ranch. Talking about floating objects, another prominent phenomenon on the ranch is the sightings of UFOs, or UATs. It seems that the Shermans saw it all, from orange balls, blue spheres, disappearing fog, round, flat aircraft with human-esque figures emerging, Thomas Donahue walking around at night, aerial light anomalies, and more. But out of everything, it seemed like these balls of light of various sizes, colors, shapes, and intensities were the most prolific. Even neighbors of the ranch reported seeing UFOs, including one that appeared to be 30 to 40 feet in diameter. Right, and so it's not just these UFOs are being spotted, and you have to be on Skinwalker Ranch just Friday night. Uh, these UFOs are being spotted and flying over neighboring ranches in the area. Right, sometimes they see them floating over Skinwalker Ranch, but other times they just see them floating over their properties or down the road, etc. One of the most interesting phenomena that to me at least, that I found that was experienced on the property is described, or what I will immediately, or I guess initially, refer to as the window. This was first reported by the Shermans, and they would frequently see this large orange quote unquote hole appear in the sky. From his vantage point in the homestead, this hole was two dimensional, right? So it had height and width. He would frequently be able to view what he referred to as another world, right? Blue skies set against the dark contrast of the night. And on rare occasion, he would witness objects or creatures appear to cross through the window, coming from some other world into ours or vice versa. And so as I was reading through, some of these reports, and I started, picking up other books and other, articles that were written around this, I realized that, what, this isn't the last time that this bright orange sphere kind of, portal uh, was referenced. In August 25th, or excuse me, on August 25th, 1997, the NIDS team reportedly encountered something extremely similar. At 2:30 a.m., a small, dull orange glow appeared above the ground of the ranch. Only 6 diameter or 6 inches in size, it began to grow brighter and brighter, larger and larger. Now, to the naked eye, this phenomena was nothing more than a hole or a tear or a window, right? But there were a number of scientists that witnessed this phenomena uh, up on the mesa, and they had a pair of grade 3 binoculars with night vision, right, infrared, and just for awareness, grade 3 binoculars are very, very, very expensive binoculars. And so this scientist that was up on the mesa realized that this window or hole wasn't a hole at all, but a tunnel. It was cylindrical on the sides and it expanded, right? Not only did this tunnel appear, but a creature climbed out of it and creeped onto the ranch. And so this brings us to cryptids, right? Cryptids of all sorts and shapes have been spotted in the Uinta Basin. One of the very first creatures reported by the Shermans was a wolf, and this is a very, very weird experience. I don't understand it even to this day. Standing almost 5 feet tall on all fours, a gray haired, blue eyed wolf casually made its way to the new ranch owners. All right. The Sherman family pulled up in a truck. They got out and they noticed there was a wolf approaching them. From 10 feet away, Terry could smell the scent of rain on dog pelt as it continued to trot up to the family. A feeling of ease and peace filled the air, I suppose, because the family, instead of doing what I would do, which is haul ass and run away, or get back in the car and lock the doors, they decided no, what would be a better idea is to gather around the beast and pet it. And so they stood there petting this wolf until, in a swift motion, the wolf took one bound away from the family to the closest corral, which was, mind you, 70 feet away. And inside of that corral, the family had just brought in its first group of cattle. Now, most of the cows had been able to get away. They saw that this wolf and decided to get towards the center of the field. However, one of the calves was not fast enough to move away, and the wolf caught it by its neck right through the metal fence. This 300-pound calf cried out as the wolf attempted to pull it through the bars. And Terry quickly reacted, grabbing his magnum and immediately shot the wolf in the ribs. Nothing. Wolf didn't bother to wince as it continued its attack. Two more shots rang out, and the wolf finally lets go and looks directly at Terry. Another shot, this time right to where the beast's heart should be. And the animal continues to stand, taking no notice. Finally, it begins to back off, moving away about 30 feet and showing no sign of distress. Terry realizes that he must put this animal down before it destroys his entire herd. He grabs his 30-06 and puts another bullet into the animal. From only 40 feet away, this animal is hit dead on. Now, that is a very powerful punch. All right. This wolf is still standing. It has no notice of bullets or wounds that it has taken. Uh, no blood, nothing dropping. Another shot, and this time right through the chest cavity. Finally, a piece of hair apparently detaches from the animal and drops to the ground. At that point, the wolf decides to turn and trots away. Now, Terry and his son give chase, but to no avail. After tracking its footprints for a period of time, the prints abruptly stop and disappear. There are no signs of blood on the tracks or on the hair that apparently fell from the animal. And interestingly enough, this is only one of many, many, many cryptid experiences that are that were on or around the ranch. Sightings of creatures coming and going through the tunnel or portal were somewhat frequent. Sometimes they would see these creatures moving around the ranch, and sometimes they would only hear or see the effects of these creatures, but not the creatures themselves. In one instance, they actually witnessed something running through one of the creek beds on the property, but only because they were watching the splashes of water arc into the air as if something was running, not a creature itself. Now, another interesting creature lives just on the northern side of the property, supposedly, in a body of water known as the Bottle Hollow Reservoir. It receives its name in the late 1800s as soldiers returning from war would throw their empty whiskey bottles into the ravine on their stupor walk home. In the 1970s, it was decided, you know what should we do with this big old, pile, this big old hole of glass? Let's fill it with water. And so so they fill it with water, and now we have Bottle Hollow Reservoir. Never try to touch the bottom. Uh, Ever since then, however, reports of a giant snake-like creature permeate the community. So why? Right? What's up with Skinwalker Ranch? Why is all this high strangeness occurring in one location, seemingly out in the middle of nowhere, right? At least that's for folks that have watched the show, that's what we're led to believe, right? This is the middle of nowhere. The one thing that I found interesting when I started trying to answer the question of why is that the ranch is not necessarily out in the middle of nowhere. There's over 63,000 uh, people living within a 30-mile radius of the ranch and a number of nearby towns. All right. Now, even some of the most rural communities or counties here in Virginia have around 93,000 people situated in it, which is 389 square miles. So there are a lot of people in a very small radius to the ranch. There's also a number of towns nearby, and there's somewhere close to about 400 drilling rigs, drilling rigs immediately south of the property, which report back to a tower situated directly north of the ranch. So that signal is starting south of the property and shooting right on over, which leads to another question. Enough to have a Walmart, enough to have, like, I don't know, probably 15 uh Dollar Generals. All right. One on every corner. So this brings up, a number of very, you know, simplistic, I guess, ideas as to what could be occurring. First off, could it be a hoax? Could it all be made up? Right? Maybe it's a way to increase the price of the ranch. Remember, we talked about, you know, Bigelow buying it for $200,000, and he's a businessman. So why wouldn't he sell it for, you know, a lot more money, 4.5 million? That sounds great to me. All right, if I could sell my house currently for 4.5 million, we'd be moving right now. Um, and so yeah, sure, that's a possibility, but activity has been reported for decades. So while it's plausible, it does seem unlikely that all of the activity over the years is also reported, also a hoax, right? It just seems like there's too many people, too many stories for it to all be a hoax. So could it be a delusion? Right? There are such things as shared psychosis or shared delusional disorders, mostly known as folia do, and maybe even paraphrenia. Again, however, it seems fairly unlikely because activity is going back as far as 15 generations, according to the Ute locals, right? So, what else? Maybe it could be the basin itself causing this activity, right? One prevailing theory is actually what is called TST, right? Tectonic strain theory. TST research points to there being an alleged geographical and temporal relationship between mild tectonic or seismic stress and reports of anomalous aerial phenomena, most likely or most commonly referred to as earthquake lightning or earthquake lights, excuse me. Again, if there was such thing as tectonic strain occurring, we do know that there is a fault line close to Skinwalker Ranch. However, it is it's the Wasatch fault line, and it's directly outside on the other side of Salt Lake City. And so I feel like, again, if we were going to say that it is some sort of tectonic strain theory, wouldn't we hear more reports of activity all throughout Utah then, including Salt Lake City itself? I have friends that live in Salt Lake City, and they're traveling to go to haunted locations, right? Another theory around that is that maybe the human brain is kind of being interacted with via VLF or ULF radiation from that strain. Do we have any ley lines there? I am not sure. I have to check on ley lines. I haven't looked. I didn't look up ley lines. Um, Another strong theory is that the military is there and there's a testing of advanced military equipment on civilians in remote parts of the country. One reason that this is thought to be is due to the reports of a constant hum emanating from underground. Again, while possible, it seems more likely that the government would just acquire the property if they desired, as opposed to alienating the civilians in the area. Now, that there are tons of examples where that doesn't happen, so it could be. Um, but we are also very good at eminent domain and just taking what we want as the American government, and so one might push towards the idea that they would just go ahead and take it. So we've kind of covered the basics, right? So let's go down the rabbit hole a little further, right? What other answers could tie all of this phenomena together? First and foremost, maybe we'll talk about the name of the ranch itself, right? Skinwalker Ranch and the originating stories, the Skinwalkers. But our government is so transparent. I know they are, aren't they? The Utes believed that the land was cursed due to the numerous negative experiences encounters they had with the Navajo tribe, and it was theorized that a skinwalker may have been employed to harass the Utes. This seems plausible at first, but a skinwalker is a very real thing to these tribes, right? And very negative. These things, these entities are living and breathing just the same as you and I to these tribes, right? A skinwalker is essentially a medicine man gone rogue, someone who performs twisted ceremonies and manipulates magic for evil. The Navajo see these individuals as chaotically evil and would be more than likely to persecute or kill a skinwalker when he or she saw one. It's highly unlikely an alliance was made. Another theory is the idea of human consciousness. Could the connection that we as humans have to the environment around us be causing this phenomenon? And this is an interesting one, and I'll give you an example why. On one afternoon, Gwen and Terry were driving through the ranch and passed by their bull enclosure. Gwen commented, "I would go out of my mind if I lost any of those animals." Terry agreed and they drove on. About 45 minutes later, they're returning past that very same enclosure, and they realize that the bulls are nowhere to be found. Frantically, they hop out of their truck and they search around the enclosure and find no signs of the animals. Finally, as a last resort, Terry walks over and examines a small, white, rusted trailer that had been parked in one of the corners of the enclosure for years. When he peeks inside, he freezes. All four 2,000-pound bulls have been crammed into this tiny trailer, and all four are completely frozen. Terry begins to try to open the door with no luck. As a last resort, he starts banging on the door on the sides, and finally, the bulls awake from their stupor and begin going berserk in the trailer. Within seconds, the metal door is kicked open and the bulls stampede out. So to me, it kind of seems that whatever is at the ranch can not only just hear conversations in remote portions of the ranch, but also react to and manipulate the emotions and thoughts of those at the ranch, right? Could it be that the inhabitants of the ranch are creating this phenomena themselves in a poltergeist fashion? We've heard of this. We've seen this. I've talked about this before, where there was actually an experiment where a number of folks got together and tried to kind of will a spirit into being, right? They went to this one specific room in this building, and they consistently talked about, I can't remember the name of it, but we'll just say that it's Paul, for example. And they kept talking about Paul and what Paul likes and how, oh, Philip, thank you, Philip. Should have remembered it's you. Um and he's with us tonight, ladies and gentlemen. No. So the Philip experiment, right? And so they kept talking about Philip, talking about what did Philip like, what did Philip do in life, and eventually they started receiving EVPs and interactivity from some sort of preternatural activity that referred to itself as Philip. So could it be that there is some sort of poltergeist fashion, kind of experience? Maybe. Over the years, remote viewers, shamans, and more have attempted to examine the ranch and all report back the feeling of dread. In fact, in multiple reports, meditating at the ranch seems to cause activity to spike in the time immediately after the meditation is performed. Again, while this does seem possible, it to me seems a little unlikely. There appears to be activity on the ranch with or without human interaction, right? And we're talking about the cattle mutilation, the orbs, etc. However, it could be a plausible explanation, and I do think that further investigation should be conducted in this kind of side of things. Now, the next couple here are things that Heather is going to absolutely love. And I told her ahead of time because I was like, well, maybe you can dive into this and chat about it too. The first off is alternate dimensions. All right. You and I, we live in a four-dimensional world, right? There's three spatial dimensions: height, width, and depth, and one temporal dimension, time, right? Time is what you consider a vector. And by that, we mean that we can only experience time moving in one direction, forward. We don't, at least that I'm aware of, have the ability to move backwards or move freely through time as we wish. And so that is why it's a vector. But what if there were more? Right. And so this is where I said at the very beginning of this presentation to not forget our ant friends and our gorilla friends, right? Think back to our ants who are now living next to a 10-lane superhighway in Atlanta, Georgia, and sweating, and it's gross, and Philip's yelling at his dogs in the backyard. Um, these ants are incapable of comprehending something so complex, right? They might catch glimpses, but that's it, and nothing more, right? They might see people shooting. Yeah, exactly. Uh, they might see brief glimpses of what's occurring, but they are incapable of comprehending it. It's the same. There's a very great study all around dimensional awareness, and if you're a three-dimensional being, or four-dimensional being, which we are, you can only experience and understand the world in three dimensions. If you're three-dimensional, you can only understand it in two dimensions, so on and so forth. Um, so we wouldn't be able to comprehend the next dimension up, and we have computers that are able to kind of give us a brief glimpse into it, right? We have you guys, Heather, you've heard of hypercubes, right? Four-dimensional cubes, right? And so they have, what is it, 16 sides, or 16 cubes, something like that, right? But we have computer models of this, but we ourselves are not able to comprehend it. And even when we look at it, we are trying to build a four-dimensional shape in a three-dimensional world. It is impossible. Um, so that brings us to another idea. How many, well, I can't, I don't have a hands, like, raise your hands at home, everybody. How many have folks have heard of string theory? Heather, I know you have. Philip, you've heard of string theory, right? Okay, cool. So string theory poses the idea that the fundamental constituents of the universe are one-dimensional strings rather than particles, and what we perceive as particles are actually just vibrations in loops of strings. Now, the most popularly accepted string theories suggest that our universe doesn't consist of four dimensions, but of somewhere around 10, 11, 21, and even up to 26. That is impossible to comprehend. And we're not talking about Marvel where, uh, Doctor Strange goes into another dimension. These are things that are around us all the time that we are just incapable of understanding, right? Just like the ants are incapable of understanding a 10-lane superhighway, or the gorillas are incapable of realizing that, nope, they're not in the only forest. There are thousands of other forests that they are not aware of, right? How do we begin to imagine, comprehend, or understand something that we've never remotely experienced? We can't. It's almost impossible, right? Now, we could also dive into the possibility that we're experiencing parallel universes, right? The idea that there could be more than one universe or multiple universes directly beside our own. This is a facet of this astronomical theory of the multiverse. It's possible that through the vantage point of quantum mechanics, and hopefully we know of quantum mechanics, and I apologize if I'm losing people because this is where I nerd out really hardcore. Um, Quantum mechanics, that our universe or our multiverse is composed of a quantum superposition, right? And this is that the phenomena that chunks of matter can occupy uh, two places at the same time. We know that quantum mechanics is a legitimate thing. um, Material can occupy two places at one time. There are studies, and granted, it's very small particles. There are studies that are moving larger and larger. We know that this is reality. This has also been demonstrated um, in by physicists in labs, and experiments are now demonstrating that phenomena with larger and larger. I say all of this because what if the phenomena occurring around us is natural? It's not preternatural, it is natural. This is the world that we live in. We're just currently incapable of understanding it. Is it possible that every experience at the Skinwalker Ranch is tied together in such a way that we are just catching glimpses of it, but nothing more? Are we the ants? And our final theory, of course, is extraterrestrial civilizations, aliens. There are 100,000 million stars in our galaxy, the Milky Way alone. All right. Around those stars orbit an estimated 100 billion planets. In the observable universe that we live in, the space that we are able to photograph, there is an estimated 200 billion to 2 trillion galaxies. Now, think about that for a second. Does anybody know how many planets that estimate adds up to? That number. And if you want to tell your friends and families, and your parents and your grandparents about it, that's pronounced 10 septillion. I cannot comprehend that number. But those are the number of planets that surround us. In the Milky Way galaxy alone, there are as many as 40 billion Earth sized planets orbiting suns in what is referred to as the Goldilocks zone. Now, the Goldilocks zone refers to the habitable zone around a star where the temperature is just right. It's not too hot, and it's not too cold, right? The porridge is just right for liquid water to exist on a planet. Keep in mind that we are considering this solely for liquid water, and that any living organisms in the universe also have to have our chemical makeup, which they do not. All right. But for the sake of this presentation, we're referring to a makeup very similar to ours. 11 billion of these planets may be orbiting suns similar to ours. And in our galaxy alone, there are as many as 16 known planets in this zone. Now, this isn't made up fictitious numbers. I didn't pull this off of, Google or anything like that. This is Kepler data from November of 2013, and so this is actually outdated. There's probably more now, and in fact, we've been able to photograph one very small portion of the night sky that, for years and years and years, was considered a black spot where there were no planets. And guess what? We just couldn't see everything there, and there is a lot more. So this takes into account again that life in our universe is similar to ours, based on hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, and hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, and nitrogen. All right. it does seem quite plausible that there is a greater chance for life to exist elsewhere in the universe than just our wobbly rock, right? And if that's the case, how advanced are these other civilizations? And if there are other advanced civilizations, well, more advanced than us, where the hell are they? Right? Why are we, why don't we have like a telephone? Furthermore, if this is some sort of advanced civilization, would they not use some sort of, maybe counter espionage to prevent us from understanding their actions, right? We do that all the time in war, and just in our basic, government, how we move our military around, right? We do very purposeful things to prevent others from understanding what we're doing. Actually, we do that in computers today, encryption, right? Who the heck would ask us for exactly? That is another great point. We're so very far down on the totem pole. Um, so so maybe there is some sort of counter espionage where we're not supposed to understand what's going on. And if that's true, then what we've witnessed is merely what we're supposed to see, and we're deriving half truths, right? In fact, this would almost take us completely out of science. These rules of engagements are completely different if we're going into espionage, right? And so again, I want to bring you back to the ants. What if Earth is just a pit stop on a highway, right? And we all have those towns around us. The you know what? I'm just gonna stop to get gas because the only other thing there is a McDonald's and an Arby's and maybe a Taco Bell, and everybody knows that eating Taco Bell on a road trip is a bad idea. Maybe we're a Taco Bell. Who knows, right? But think about that for a second. We always seem to catch glimpses of UFOs and aliens, but we never seem to comprehend the entire picture. We can never get a full understanding of what's going on. Or maybe like the gorillas, Earth is still too primitive in its technology. Maybe all too similar to the gorillas, we ourselves are unaware of galactic empires, borders, politics, and our own position in the galactic pecking order. Right? We're busy fighting ourselves on a very, very tiny rock that is hurtling through space. Who would want to interact with that? I wouldn't. And so to kind of, I guess, recap, it was a very humbling experience to research and understand, and dive into Skinwalker Ranch. In the end, it really forced me to unpack my preternatural packaging, right? The experiences reported on this small parcel of land relate all too well to stories across the globe. One thing that I really, really found an appreciation for is that the research being done to investigate claims of cryptids, aliens, UFOs, and general high strangeness is all too similar to the same research and devices we utilize for paranormal investigating, right? They're looking at EMF, right? Electromagnetic field fluctuations. They're looking at um, uh, light phenomena. They're looking at um, gosh, what is it that I'm looking for? Um, Possibly. Uh, I can't remember the name. Anyways, we're looking at very similar data that is in the paranormal field, and now we're seeing it in, cryptids, aliens, UFOs, Geiger counters. There we go. I figured it out. I got the word. Radiation. We're seeing spikes of radiation. They're seeing spikes of radiation uh, in relation to cryptid sightings, alien sightings, UFO sightings on the ranch. We're seeing the same thing, right? Radiation occurring right around preternatural experiences in the paranormal. And ultimately, it's forced me to keep my mind open to the endless possibilities that life has to offer. In the wise words of philosopher Francis Bacon, they are ill discoverers that think there is no land when they can see nothing but sea. And it is through our giving up our preconceived notions of the world and following whatever abyss nature creates that we will only begin to understand, learn, and grow. And now, questions.
Got to be some good ones.
Yeah, I'm waiting for people to post questions. I know there are some comments as you went along, and I think you got most of them, but
I tried to. It was very.
right. I know Anton said each universe based in a different frequency with a question mark.
I mean, it's possible. I haven't dived into too heavy of the multiverse idea. The biggest problem with that is it's very difficult to prove, right? You look at some of the ideas around quantum mechanics where objects can be in the same place or can be in more than one place at the same time. And I actually have a very strong theory, I guess, to me, when I investigate in the paranormal, um, that when we're experiencing what we consider ghosts, um, why does it have to be dead people? Why couldn't it be a universe that is paralleling ours, except it's the 1860s, right? The midst of the Civil War, and we're seeing soldiers marching through a battlefield in Gettysburg, and as they're marching, they're oblivious to us standing over here, because I don't know, they're busy getting shot at. So you know, to me, it's like, well, do we just experience something that we have a brief glimpse into another universe, right? As opposed to those people are dead, right? And I'll give you an example. A place called St. Albans Sanatorium where we investigate quite frequently. A teammate of mine, he was going through and investigating it, privately investigated or privately rented out the building for his family, and he was going through investigating, and he walked past the stairwell that went downwards into the building, and he looked down the steps and he made direct eye contact with what appeared to be a man wearing a pig mask. All right, like out of Saw, okay, kind of deal. And Alan, he was startled, right? Because who wouldn't be? And so was the man in the pig mask. The difference is Alan stood there. The pig man turned around and disappeared. Now, if we go with this notion that ghosts are always around us and they are aware of everything that's going on, they're all knowing and all seeing, why was this quote unquote spirit startled to see Alan just as Alan was to see him? And now keep in mind that St. Albans every October turns into a haunted house, and the entire duration of October is you go there for a haunted house. The entire building's turned into a haunted house. You can go in, you can tour, and they did have masks very similar to that. So could it be, in some other alternate universe, it's October of last year, and they're getting ready, getting into their place, and oh no, somebody, some guest is off the beaten path where they're not supposed to be, and that just happened to be Alan, and it startled them.
Yeah, that goes along with one of the theories that I've always had, is that we're on different wavelengths, and you know how the radio waves go up and down, and that we connect and we're able to see each dimension just as they cross over.
Yep.
In those few brief moments of the crossing over between the two frequencies.
Yep.
And you talk about, two things being in the same place, quantum physics. I mean, if you look at an airplane propeller, just a double propeller, when it's spinning, it looks solid. It looks like it's covering the entire span, but there's only two blades.
Yep.
But their frequency is so fast that it looks like it's solid. So things look like they're in the same place, even though they may not be.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
No, I mean, that goes back to quantum mechanics. I mean, it literally goes back to something that we know is legitimate science.
Yeah.
String theory, you could toss string theory out there and you'll have a split audience where half will say, you know what, that's plausible, and the other half will say, no, that's absolute bullshit. Quantum mechanics, we already have quantum computers. It's already a thing. This is, it's not like, well, maybe it's real. Nope, it's legitimate.
Yeah.
This is a thing. So I feel like taking a dive into this idea of high strangeness, why does it have to be preternatural? Why can't it be natural? Why can't we just not understand it yet? The same reason that, thousands of years ago we were sacrificing babies so that the sun would come up the next
Yeah.
day, right? Thankfully, only Philip sacrifices babies every night now, but the rest of us
So it
keep our
doesn't
kids
get
safe.
cold.
The rest of us keep our kids safe, and guess what? The sun does still come up in the morning.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and that's what I always try to explain to people, because the biggest criticism I get is it'll never be a real science. And I'm like, well, why can't it be? Because if you think about back in the old days, astronomy, it wasn't a science. It was considered supernatural.
I
even
mean,
just physics and chemistry was considered supernatural.
Almost every scientist back in that day were chastised and beat, tortured, jailed, and if not murdered, for their beliefs in something that is scientifically accurate. We just weren't ready to understand it.
Yeah.
And that also goes back to the idea that we are still Stone Age creatures, right? When you look at the fact that it takes hundreds of thousands of years to evolve, right? It takes a long time to evolve, and it took us what, less than 20 years to go from a landline telephone to something like this.
That's from the aliens at Area 51.
Yep.
But I mean, regardless of where it came from, keep in mind the fact that we haven't evolved. We are still the same humans that have been around for thousands of years, right? And that's why I always like to point out, when we turn off the lights, or like when I put my kids to bed and they're scared of their bedroom at night. Why? It's dark. Why are you afraid of the dark? I don't know. I just am. Well, it's because way back in the day when we were living out, as nomadic tribes, we were afraid of the dark because that is when we would get eaten by lions and tigers and bears, right? That is when we were no longer at the top of the food chain, and that was terrifying. And that is why we are still afraid of the dark. It is built into our DNA. And so when you look at something like a cell phone, where we have this instant gratification, and where it used to be that you'd have to go and visit somebody to talk to them. Now, if they don't text you back within 2 minutes, you're like, what the hell is wrong with you? They must not like me anymore. We have not evolved to this level of technology, level of understanding that we have. We just, our brains, while we're very intelligent creatures, we're not quite there yet. We're not there.
Yep.
Yeah, but the stories from Skinwalker, even though they date back, it's so hard to know fact from fiction when things get embellished over time from so long ago. Shooting at this creature, and and he kept going after the cattle. I mean, did he really hit the thing? Who knows? I mean, there's so many embellishments over time, and plus, when you're looking at the entertainment factor, especially for the TV shows, I mean, we know the paranormal ghost hunting shows are all sensationalized, and it's just hard to know what's real and what's not real anymore. But everything's based on some bit of fact and truth. We just don't know how far it's gone off the rails.
And I would say, I would argue that it definitely is embellished, and the reason behind that is, and this is a weird thing, and it's tough, because then you're like, well, I don't remember anything anymore. Every time we remember something, we actually remember it and then rewrite it very slightly back into our memory. And so by the time you've remembered something 100 times, it is not anywhere near the reality of what actually happened.
Exactly.
Right. We have slightly altered it because we're remembering it, but we're remembering a little bit less. So we fill in some gaps, and there it is. There's our memory. Now, from a storytelling perspective, of course, there's probably some embellishment. Do I think that, regardless of that embellishment, that there is some sort of activity there? Oh, yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. And then talking about Skinwalker Ranch, Thomas wanted to know, do you like the show, and do you believe that their experiments are headed in the right direction?
I do like the show. I like what they're doing. I really am a huge fan of Travis Taylor, and some of the work that he's doing there. I love that they're exploring different aspects that make it a paranormal TV show, but at the same time, kind of showcases the science that could be behind it. If first off, you gotta have a lot of money for a lot of what they're doing, but second of all, the science that is possible and some of the really really neat findings that they're coming out with. I do believe that television is for entertainment. So you know, I will say that when they're filming, they probably didn't film that all in one day. That was probably a couple of weeks of things. I also, always point out that there are 400 some drilling rigs right south of the property that are all sending a wireless, connection across the ranch to a giant tower that you'll never see on the TV show, as well as the fact that they fly in folks, even though it's really not that far out there in the middle of nowhere. I think that is a star-studded entertainment entrance, the rock star entrance. Uh,
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
but I do enjoy it, and I think that hopefully the idea of the experiments that they're running there will broaden folks' kind of idea of the paranormal, and like I think we get so pigeonholed and um into the idea that ghosts are our loved ones that have passed away or our ancestors, and I'm not sure why, other than the fact that we're very selfish creatures uh as humans. I'm not sure why we have to believe that that's necessarily the only truth. I
Most
think they're
people
very
fear
very much
death
deep.
too. They have their own issues with the thought of dying and the fear of death and hoping there's something else. But
Sure. Yeah.
uh, but and why can't everything? Why can't it be both? Why can't it be there?
Exactly.
There are other people in these dimensions, but yet when we go to a historical location and we ask, "Is Judge Brown here?" and we know Judge Brown died in this house 100 years ago, and we get an EVP and says, "I'm here" or something, that's actually that person from 100 years ago whose soul is still existing. And yet there can be other dimensions with different time periods going on. I mean, there's possibilities for everything to be happening. We can't say it. I mean, in this field, we can't say anything's not possible.
I'll
Because it
tell
is.
you um my way of getting around the existential crisis of death is quantum immortality. All right. I My favorite theory is the idea that when I die here in this universe, I'm going to be spread amongst all the other versions of Steve Dills out there, and they because it's infinite. I'm just going to live on and harass people for forever. Just other versions of me. So I'm a-okay with that.
Yeah.
I'll just be in another universe. I might be a cat Steve Dills. Cat Steve Dills is talking about, I don't know,
I'm just glad I don't have to
Cat Walker
exercise.
Ranch.
I did find the part where he got the radiation burns on his face when they opened that hatch. I mean, that's pretty fascinating. I mean, that had to be a good jolt to get burns on your face. And where would that have possibly come from? I mean, that to me really kind of made me think, wow, this is, unless they faked the whole thing, which it didn't appear that they did. But I mean, he had burns on the side of his face.
I mean, looking at if you go on the fact that the Geiger counter was ticking off, and so that definitely denotes some sort of radiation.
Yeah.
It's not implausible to believe that that is true. The reason I say that is because here in Virginia, as in most states, there is radon in the ground.
Yeah.
And when it breaks down, right, and it's got a short half-life, it can become ionizing radiation. It can actually cause issues to your health. It can burn
Yeah.
you. And so uh one of the tools that we actually have started using because of that, and because of the fact that we don't want to walk into some of these buildings where there's these creepy old basements, and we go in there and we open the door that nobody has opened or been in for years on end, and now all of a sudden we're experiencing all this crazy activity. Radiation can cause hallucinations, both audible and visual. And so that's why, especially here in Virginia, if you have a basement, you have to have a radon detector, and you have to have a fan that is running to clear out the air, right? Get all the air that's in the basement outside, bring in fresh air, and that clears out the radon. It's as simple as that. Now, if you have a buildup of, and I'm not necessarily stating that this is radon. I don't know what the chemical composition of the soil is in Utah. However, it is very likely that if that was not opened for a significant amount of time, and then they're like, you know what, let's pop this bad boy open, and it was fairly, airtight, sealed tight. Well, guess what? You might get something, right? You might have something kick off, because now it's escaping into the atmosphere. And then, subsequent times of them opening that, they didn't have anything as serious, right? Because I don't think that whatever that was, that half life of whatever element, didn't have enough time to build up to such a degree.
Yeah, because the
as
second
first
time they went, there was no radiation when they went back.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I mean, it could be. I'm not saying that is it. I'm just saying that is.
It's a good debunking possibility. I mean, and it's too late because it's all escaped by the time they, you can't measure it when it's already over with. But we do check. We know we have a radiation detector when we do baseline readings for investigations. But and we always ask if they have a working carbon monoxide meter in the house. If they do, we don't test for that. But radon is something we may need to check.
Well, your Geiger counter will check for that. It'll check radon. So you're fine about that. I know GQ, the brand, has a number of really reliable ones that I use, and other teams that I know use. Actually, another team, CPRI, turned me onto it. And you've had Brad Bradley on here a few times.
Actually, I contacted him before I bought the one that we have, and I said, "Will this do what I needed to do?" And he said, "Absolutely." So. Yeah.
And so it's a data logger, and it will show you, over time it'll plot a graph stating, okay, this is where your radiation levels are. This is where it is now, or this is where it is. By, I think it's millisecond. I think it's millisecond. I think it takes 60 readings in 1 second. And so, you see your counts per minute. And now, interestingly enough, on investigations, we have seen, and this aligns with some of the work CPRI is doing, albeit they're doing it much more documented and well rehearsed, but they're seeing, and we are seeing, spikes in ionizing radiation immediately prior, during, or immediately after some sort of preternatural activity, which is very interesting. And to me, that's something tangible. That's something that I can hold on to, and I can say, look at this. We had this footstep, we had this object move, and now we have a spike in ionizing radiation, or a spike in barometric pressure that aligns with whatever is occurring.
But what do we think that means? Does that mean it's the energy created by whatever created the footsteps, or is it the egg or the chicken? I mean,
I don't, to me, what that means is this is something natural that we don't yet understand.
Yeah.
That's what that means. That means to me that this is something that we just have yet to explain, and that it is not a fringe science. This is something that we're just in the forefront of. It's the same thing as when you look at medical procedures done during the Civil War, where somebody got shot, and so they realized that the best way to save them was to lop the whole arm off.
Cut it off.
What they didn't realize is that instead, when originally they were just saying, oh, you know what, we're going to bandage that, we're going to leave that, we're going to leave that bullet in there, that they were getting infections. And they weren't treating those infections. And so that's why patients died. But they were like, you know what, well, if we just lop the whole arm off, there's a much better chance of survival. Like, who knew that we had to sterilize and clean the wound? Whew, nobody. And so here we are now, where people are getting, I mean, I had my uncle had an accident with a chainsaw, and if this was years back, they would just lop his arm off. He can still do everything, for the most part, with his arm and his hand now, right? And so you just kind of look at how far have we progressed, and I think that the more folks that take this seriously, and don't get me wrong, there's definitely a lot of fun to be had, and I am I'm definitely a somebody that likes to have fun in my life. But I think if we get out of this idea that it is a pseudoscience or a fringe topic and into the idea that, yeah, if we can measure some of these things, and I'm not saying everything can be measured, and I'm not saying everything, is science, but I think that there are a lot of things that can be measured if we have the right equipment.
Well, I think the part about, quantum physics and string theories and those part of the paranormal are scientific because they're mathematical. The part where they'll never take it seriously is the human soul part, being outside the body, because we can't prove that in a lab. So there's two parts to this. It's the scientific, mathematical, physics, and that part, but it's well, there's a ghost here of a dead person. That's the part that they're like,
But who knows? I mean,
because they kind of, everything is connected in a way.
I think there's one whole study on pre and post death weights, and they were saying that, okay, well,
yeah,
we do see a difference,
27 grams or something,
something like that, right? But there's also the idea of just the human consciousness, right? And I don't necessarily think that. Let me be clear. I have absolutely no idea what happens after we die, and I think if anybody says this is what happens, that is bullshit, and you should turn and run away. However, I do think something occurs. I don't think that this is it and we're done and one and done. I feel like that'd be a waste of material, right? Also throw in the idea that we're made out of these same materials that were around at the very beginning of our universe, right at the Big Bang. There is no new material. It's just reconstructions of the same thing. And the fun fact that if this is infinite, right, and if we aren't going to explode or implode at the once we get to the tail end of whatever we're doing while we hurtle through space, that would theoretically mean that it is it's ever growing, right? It is always going to occur. And if it is never ending, and I can't remember the term for that because I'm just drawing a blank and it's late, that means that at some point in time we could be reconstructed in the same form, features, everything. So there is a very low probability of that, but guess what? In the absence of defined time, and if we're indefinite, if time is going to extend into whatever time of memoriam, then we could be reconstructed at some point in the future. So who's to say we aren't?
It's a lot to think about. The more questions you think about, the more questions you have to think about. So it's just more questions.
I strive to give people more questions.
Well, we need to question these things. It's the only way we're going to ever, find out what it's about if we don't ask what the questions are.
I agree.
Comments?
No, we're quiet. Michael and Michelle have popped in to say hello.
Hello.
How's it going, guys?
And I see Jerry and Anton are still here, but other than that, they're pretty quiet.
But my point of view on the afterlife as being a medium, I know what's out there. I don't know where they are, what dimension, but I know they're able to communicate through mediumship abilities. But as far as what people call earthbound, which I hate bound, it sounds like they're chained and enslaved, but they're not. What dimension are they in that they're able to? Because some people think they're always going to be, like you said, in a location. Well, if they were always in that location, things would be constantly happening, but we know that they're not. We can go to a place and get activity one night and go 3 more times and get nothing. So what dimension are these entities and soul in the meantime that they can pop in? They can hear us sometimes they don't hear us. There's all these questions like, well, where? And we asked these questions last time. Where are you when you're not in this house? We didn't get a response. Can you see us from where you are? I mean, we asked some really deep questions at the Lotes house last time, but didn't get any. We got plenty of responses on other things, but not on any of those serious, deep questions. But we've written all these down, and we're going to ask these every time.
Yep.
Like where are you when you're not here?
I think that's a cool idea because the neat thing about Virginia is history ties a lot of the historical buildings together.
Yeah.
And I've been able to go to one location and interact with, let's just call him Jim Bob, Spirit Jim Bob, or something that says that I am Jim Bob. And then I can go to another location and interact with Jim Bob there as well.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you say, well, they're, whatever this is confined to the structure of this building. Why? Why, I'm not confined to my house. Like, sure, my neighbors will probably think I'm weird if I go out right now and start walking up and down the street. However, I'm not confined here. I just like to hang out here a lot, right? And there's also other favorite locations that I have that I enjoy to hang out in. And that, if we all subscribe to the preconceived notion that ghosts are dead folks, I am more along, I guess I more so agree with the idea that we're not necessarily stuck because of some traumatic experience, right? Like Michael said, spirits can travel anywhere. I think that just in life, we are as in death, and we're going to want to spend time in those places that have the most emotional impact to us. And that could be happy, that could be sad, that could be angry, it could be any of those things, right? I could, maybe I want to spend some time up at my favorite historical locations, Hanover Tavern. Maybe I want to go to St. Albans for a little bit and hang out with all the other crazy ass spirits that are there. But maybe I want to come home, right? Maybe I want to go visit my kids. Like, I'm going places that have emotional attachment to me, not necessarily, I'm not probably going to hang out where I died.
Yeah. Now, this is something that happened many years ago. If you know Robert Murphy of Elite Paranormal, they used to do a lot of live stream investigations back in the day. And I used to watch and, give them some, information that I would get. But that one night they were at a private home, and then my team had a private home investigation. And when we got there, I knew something was up. It turned out to be a control situation. There wasn't any reported activity, but we needed to see if we're going to pick up anything. And I said, I'm seeing this little boy, but he doesn't belong here, and his name is such and such. And I said, this is just really weird. I don't know why this kid's here. It doesn't belong with this house. So we finished up. I'll go home. They're still investigating. I log in and I see their investigation, and they're talking about this little boy. And I said, wait a minute. I said, is he a little boy, blonde hair, same name? He was communicating with them and me at the same time in two different states. It was the most bizarre. And there was so much information, we could not deny that was not what was going on. I mean, I think they have that video on their YouTube page. I don't remember what the name of what case it was, but it was so strange. So these spirits can be in two places almost simultaneously, in if they want. I don't know how, but he was communicating with me, and I was seeing him, and they had him in their location too.
I mean, and that kind of goes back a little bit to the idea of dimensional awareness too, right? Again, we and this could go on for forever and a day here, but we look at time again as a vector. We experience time, and a lot of people say, well, maybe time is just a man-made construct. I would disagree in the fact that if I told you to meet me at the Wawa down the road, you couldn't just say okay. You'd say what time, right?
Exactly.
And that's the same thing. Even if you take that from a planetary model, where the Earth is consistently, not only are we rotating around the sun, a star, we're also moving, and we're moving faster and faster away, eventually to the point that we're never actually going to see any other stars when we look up in the night sky. It's just going to be dark, and it's going to be sad and miserable. So if you kind of take a step back and look at that and understand that, well, maybe, and kind of like to Linda's question here, maybe we are just in this place where we can only comprehend time as ever, ever moving forward, right? The unstoppable march of time. However, that doesn't mean that if we are just another level of dimensional awareness, that we can't look at time in the same way that we would look at this pen, right? I can see that it starts here and it ends here, right? And I know that once I get over here, the pen is ended, but that doesn't mean that it no longer exists. It's right here. I can look at it, I can turn it around, I can go to each side of this, at each facet, and I can explore this pen. That, or marker, sorry, but you could do potentially the same thing with people, right? You could say, well, you know what? I see Steve. I see where Steve starts. I see where Steve ends. Steve doesn't exist over here any longer, but that doesn't mean Steve never existed. He just exists right here. And you couldn't just say, you know what? Well, I've got this version. I've got Steve, and let me get 2 other markers, and now let me talk to all 3 of them. So I think that could probably play a little bit into the idea of, some sort of spirit or being or whatever, what have you, being able to communicate in more than one facet or more than one time. It's possible.
And do they know time? I mean, how many times have we gotten information from a spirit that's at a future location before we go? They know we're coming. That's happened to me many, many, many times. And it's like, so are they in the present? Are they in the future? Are they in the past, present, and future?
Because yes, but that's also looking at time in a very vector format. That's looking at time in a very pigeonholed view as, the past is the past. We can no longer go back to it. The future is right this second. And, or excuse me, the present is right this second, and the future is over here tomorrow. That doesn't necessarily mean that everything experiences that way, right? And we know that in the presence of gravity, time moves faster, right? And in the absence of gravity, time moves slower. And so we could, we can kind of navigate time a little bit, which to me seems a little bit of wiggle room, right? So it'd be very interesting.
I know people, they're commenting. Heather, what do you have?
Just a couple comments. Like Linda asked about what you think of the 4th dimension. Michael said he loves the Monticello.
Sorry, it's like right up the road.
I'm tired.
Actually, that was my elementary school, Monticello.
Oh, was it really? I wonder. Maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong.
Well, we were Southern, so that's the way we're going to say it.
Linda says, I've heard several times that a spirit has the ability to be in 6 places at once. Then with soul advancement, they can be in more places. It's possible. It's possible. I mean, I don't know the rules and regulations, and I'm not like. I feel like, we can catch glimpses of things, but again, going back to the whole idea of are we the ants or gorillas? I don't think that we ever have enough information that we can derive a truth from something. I think we get little tidbits of information, and hopefully we can piece together little pieces of the puzzle. But I can't imagine that we'll always have the entire puzzle. I think we'll get bits.
And then she also commented, I've also heard that levels of dimensions exist with one nested into the other. We live in D1 and D2 along with D3. So there are times when parts of us are higher and parts are other higher dimensions. I need to go to bed.
Like, no, you need some coffee.
I can't even talk. Oh, I should have had coffee before the show. You're right.
I mean, I agree. I think, again, when I talk about dimensions, I am talking about, temporal, which is going to be, height with depth. We also know that time is essentially a dimension, right? So why can't there be more? And if there are more, then that means by law of nature, we are experiencing all of them. We just can't comprehend or don't understand it. It's the same thing if you took an ant and you were like, "Hey, ant, listen,
Yeah.
I know you live on this tree, but guess what? There's 10 million other trees
Yeah.
right next to you." And the ant will be like, "No, that's not true." And so it's so hard to say, like, how do you comprehend that?
Mhm.
If you haven't experienced that or haven't seen it, how are you supposed to comprehend it? It goes back to the idea of the hypercube, right? 16 sides, and each side is a cube in and of itself.
Yep.
I can't imagine that. Even if I had all the coffee in the world, I wouldn't be able to imagine that, because my brain is operating in a four-dimensional, level of awareness.
Now, from a spiritualist view, speaking of your higher self, higher dimension, sometimes you can channel your higher self, which can lead you and guide you, because that part of your soul lives in a higher dimension, in the dimension that knows the past, present, and future, and knows what's best for you because of it knows the future. Getting really woo-woo here, but that's part of spiritualism is you can
Which is
channel
also
your
scary, though, because
yeah.
then that talks about the idea of predetermined or predestined paths, and
Mm-hmm.
we're predetermined to do everything that we're ever going to do, which is also kind of a scary thing.
Yeah, I mean, because there are soul contracts that they say people sign before they're born, which that's a bit much for me, but who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah.
Yep.
According to most astrologers, believe in many more than four. Yeah, I agree. I think
Yeah.
just because, I mean, again, I go back to the idea that we only know what we know. Um, you know, when we say that, that also means that there is a level of awareness. There's a level of this world that we don't understand. Right?
Mm-hmm.
We're still exploring the depths of the sea, and we're still exploring the land, and we're still finding and interacting with new creatures and new species every single day.
Absolutely.
Right? And that is just the things that we can see and feel and touch. Right? That has nothing to do with what lies beyond our atmosphere and everything else that we have yet to experience. And keep in mind that's only limited to uh, our senses, right? Our what we
Mm-hmm.
can see. We know
Yeah.
that there are more colors than what we can comprehend. We're
Mm-hmm.
aware of that. We know that. And so, what does that mean? Right? Like, if you look at a bird and it's all pitch black, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's actually multiple layers of colors in there that
Uh-huh.
we can't see because we have a very limited vision. Same thing with
Uh-huh.
hearing, right? We have a very limited range for hearing. And when you look at, some of the EMFs, and we look at some of these that are either below or above the human range of hearing, and we're just so lucky that we have recording equipment that captures that and then
Yeah.
compresses it down in a frequency that we can hear.
It's like chain link fences. Have you ever seen a chain link fence painted black? You can see through it. It disappears when it's painted black. So that's why so many now are doing their chain link fences in black, because they don't obstruct the views. But it's still there.
See, I
So
like my privacy fence. Yeah, I want the 8 foot. Do you have a 10 foot?
yeah, and caulk those boards together. I don't want
Yeah,
them.
put those boards as close together as
I don't want
possible.
any light coming through those suckers.
You guys are terrible.
I might be naked sunbathing out there, No, I'll stay out of the sun. I'm allergic to the sun.
Bringing the show back down to earth after that comment, Philip.
Bring it down.
One last question before we cut it out. Paul Elliott wants to know what your opinions on the drone experiment they did at Skinwalker.
I briefly recall that episode, and I believe
Yeah.
you're referring to the one where they sent like 100 some drones up, and they all started to kind of act erratically. I definitely think it's interesting. I think that um, I'm not discounting the idea that there is something there. I think that whatever that is being interacted with, I'm not sold on the idea that it's intelligent. Um, just because something acts in a certain way doesn't mean it's intelligent, right? It just means that it is, and it's doing
Reactive.
what it's doing, right? Um, when you touch something hot, you always get burned, right? It's not that the fire is intelligent and it's like I'm just gonna burn Philip. It's gonna burn anybody, right?
Yeah.
So I think that the drone experiment and a lot of the experiments that they're doing, especially where they're finding something up at that very specific uh, point in the
Yeah.
sky, is really really wildly interesting. Um, I also have a feeling that they're finding that frequency that seems to be kind of showing up
Yeah.
everywhere throughout their experiments. I find that very interesting, whether that's a communication signal or what frequency ever is being utilized. Um, I do think that uh, the uh, the airwaves are getting a little jammed
Yeah.
in a sense because we are introducing more and more and more and more and more wireless technology. And what does that how does that impact the sensors and everything on board on some of the devices that we're utilizing? How does that interact? Does
Yeah.
that cause outages that are causing the erratic behavior? I don't know. I mean, I'm definitely
Yeah.
not like I'm technical, don't get me wrong, but when it comes down to getting really individually into some of those things, it's hard to say.
Yeah. Plus, satellites beaming down at us constantly, sending signals down, along with all the wireless and television, radio frequencies going through the air. I mean, we're getting hit constantly with this stuff.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, posted where they hit the invisible wall, that force field, and ended up flying back to take off point and can't fly any further. Yeah, 100%. Yep, that's exactly what I remember. And again, I mean, I don't know. I mean, could there be something there? Quite possibly. Does it necessarily have to be? I think at one point the idea was there was some physical invisible thing there. I don't necessarily think it has to be
Yeah.
physical for that to be kind of like a force field, if you will. I think it just needs to be something that, for whatever reason, that's a black hole or
Yeah.
a spot where that technology is like, I cannot fly here. I see that quite frequently when I fly my drone. I'm nearby an airport here, and um, uh, you know, just from the data that's being sent, if I go up a certain height, I can't fly any further. If I go any further than that, it comes right back home.
Hmm.
So I mean, who's to say there's not somebody, you know,
It's
I
the
guess,
government.
yeah. I mean, it could be, sending something that's saying, hey, you're not going to fly any higher than this right
Yeah.
here for whatever reason, right? Or maybe just a perfect set of signals that are coming through that it is just a wonky little spot.
Interesting.
Yep.
So raise your hand if you think Sasquatch is interdimensional.
I don't know. I don't know. I've posed that idea because if you look at the idea of Sasquatch, right? It's the same thing, right? It's the same thing. It's the same thing as when we look at footage from ghosts, when we look at footage from UFOs, when we look at footage
Yeah.
from other cryptids. We have this grainy, horrible, like 120p footage that you can barely make out, and you could like that could be
Like my
Sasquatch.
selfies. Yeah.
it could also it could also be a potato. Like you don't know. Like it could be anything.
A hairy
It
potato.
it could be. It could be. It could be a potato
Mhm.
that mom forgot in the pantry, and now it's just, you know what I'm talking about, where it
Yeah.
grows all them little weird looking things.
And it starts to
Uh,
crawl.
yeah, man, it becomes sentient. But I do find it interesting that of all of that, you could be chasing something, right, where
Mhm.
we experience something in the paranormal and we start running it down. We hear
Mhm.
a footstep, we hear a door close down the hallway over here, we start running to that thing. What do we find? Nothing physical, right? we don't
Yeah.
we don't find footsteps. I don't find I don't unmask a ghost like Scooby-Doo does. Nor have I
Mhm.
seen any of these uh shows where they're like, okay, well, we're gonna hunt Sasquatch. And then at the very
Mhm.
end, they're like, we didn't find Sasquatch, and I'm
Mhm.
like, no shit.
Yeah.
Excuse my French, but like,
It's a
first
pretty
off, why
French
would
word.
you want to hunt something that is arguably much bigger than you?
Yeah.
And in in that case, it's going to be a lot stronger, so it could probably murder you in one fell swoop. However, we have no definitive proof to me, uh, and so could it all be connected? And that's the point of the presentation, like you said, Philip.
Mm-hmm.
Could it be interdimensional? Sure, why not? Right?
Mhm.
I mean, if we're looking at UFOs and aliens and ghosts and all these things, and they
Shadow
all seem to
people.
do the same thing, right?
Mhm.
They all do the same thing.
Yeah.
We experience them and then they disappear.
Yeah, just like my dates.
Just like your Tinder.
Oh my gosh. That's a whole nother show, Philip.
That's a different show. Sorry. It's almost 11, so.
Yeah. And while we're winding things down, before we go, Steve, thank you again for being on the show tonight. As always, it's been a great conversation and learned a lot. Can you let everybody know where they can find you?
Yes. So you can find me in Richmond, Virginia. No. Actually, if you do want to find me, I'm usually up at the Hanover Tavern. So if you find the Hanover Tavern, you might find me or somebody that knows me, guaranteed 100%. But online, you can find me at transcendparanormal.com, theghostfinders.com. You can find us on Facebook and all of the social medias, both for Transcend Paranormal and the Ghost Finders. You can also find myself and my paranormal partner in crime, Chris Vaughn, on what we lovingly call our potato quality TV show or YouTube series called Eerie Encounters. It's on YouTube. We also have it on Facebook. Forewarning, because I do all of the editing and I have a whole bunch of zero time to do that right now. There's like 20 or 30 episodes of us doing things that has not seen the light of day yet. And that's just what happens when you're raising kids and have a full-time job. So that'll eventually get there.
Darn
But yeah,
job.
you can
Spoils all the fun.
And then I will be a huge shout out to the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash. I'll be at the Bash coming up. That is hosted by Pam and Steve Barry. So I'll be there in July, and that is gonna be so much fun. I'm so excited. Philip, have you been to the Bash? You're close by.
I'm not that close.
You are like close-ish. You're on this side.
I'm on the East Coast, but
that's close. Heather, where are you again, Heather?
At Southwest Florida now.
You're still on the East Coast.
Yeah. I was in Nevada, but now we're in Florida.
Yeah.
You can pick me up on the way.
Pick up Phil and come hang out. That'd be great.
I want to go to Gettysburg, but I want to do it on, a small, more intimate situation of, I don't want to be in the crowd. You know what I mean? I want to really do some.
I mean, we do that. What we'll do is there's a lot of people that like to hang out and party at the Bash. What we'll do, my team is not big in drinking and any of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
We were years ago when we were all young, but not anymore. And so so what we'll do is we'll do the Bash at day, we'll hang out a little bit, and then we'll actually go and investigate. We'll go and investigate, or we'll go grab dinner, we'll go on a tour, and just explore. And that's what we do. And I find a lot of value in that. I bring the family and we go up and have a lot of fun as just a whole family, because we get to explore Gettysburg. So you don't have to do the Bash like all 3 days. You can come and hang out for a little bit, and then go grab some lunch, go explore a little bit, those sorts of things, because there's so much to do and see up there. So and the nice thing is I will be there at the same time, so I can finally see you guys in person. See,
yes,
that's the benefit.
Philip and I still need to meet in person. So
I know we never have. Not funny.
Over 4 years. But yeah, we still have fun doing what we do. And one of these days, I mean, I'm still keeping my fingers crossed that we are able to do some stuff together.
Yes, we will. We will.
Oh yeah, especially now that I'm on the East Coast.
I'll be off to see the mouse very soon.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, when you come down here, if you guys have time. If you're seeing the mouse, you might not have time though.
Well, you'll be broke after you see the mouse.
Yeah, I'm gonna be broke is what's gonna happen.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, I used to work for the mouse, and I was still broke.
Yeah.
But anyway, I didn't realize it's 11 o'clock. So again, make sure you guys follow us on Facebook at Ghost Education 101, where you can also catch the replay, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is also Ghost Education 101. And we also air every other week on Parallax TV on Facebook. And then don't forget, we are now, some of our more popular shows and on-demand shows that people keep asking about are now being edited and airing on WDJY at 99.1 in Atlanta on Monday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern.
That's awesome.
So
And we're now also on
exciting.
Spotify, Amazon Podcasts, and iHeartRadio.
Yep.
All of your favorite listening platforms.
So,
and Google Podcasts, but they're going away. Google will no longer have podcasts.
I know they are. I'm sad.
But everybody, keep my team in your thoughts this weekend. We have a private home investigation with some really odd things going on. So just keep us in your thoughts as we try to help these people.
Okay. And hopefully we have some interesting information from that when we come back to hear what happened during that with what you can share with us.
Yeah, they don't want us to share anything publicly. So
right. Yeah, no.
Makes sense though. I get it.
And then we have another fascinating show. Every show this year I've planned out, and I'm looking forward to every one. So I'm excited about this one as well. Is we have a bunch of law enforcement officers coming on to talk about crime scenes and the paranormal. Larry Lawson has been a repeat guest on our show. He's from here in Florida.
I know Larry.
He's great.
And I know Alan too.
Yeah, I was going to say Larry. I've known Larry for years. Our kids grew up together.
I was on Larry's show not long ago. I love Larry.
Yeah.
He's great.
He's a great guy. He's a great guy. And then Ike Enzi is also, he does a lot of Sasquatching, and he was a former law enforcement officer. And then Mark Nesbitt, he runs the Ghost of Gettysburg tours, and he also wrote a book called Of Blood and Ghosts, and that talks about haunted crime scenes that he wrote with a former FBI specialist. So I tried to get her on the show, but she is on tour that week, so she can't be here with us. But we will be back on June 5th with that panel discussion. So that is going to be a fun show.
That is going to be a good show.
Yeah, and everybody except Mark has already been on the show, so all of our viewers know them. They've been on the show several times.
It's been quite a while, though.
Yeah, it has been. I think the last one I had with Larry was when we did the Orb show. And that was last year. Oh, geez, how time flies. And then Ike's been a couple of years, and Alan was earlier this year. Something like that. So, but yeah. So looking forward to having everybody back on the show. And Mark, he's a great storyteller. He is absolutely amazing. He was one of the guys who got me into the paranormal field. He answered this young little teenager's questions about why do ghosts happen. And next thing you know, I was hooked.
There you are.
That was it.
Exactly. So, but again, thank you, Steve, for joining us. Great presentation. You actually gave me some information I wrote down that I'm going to be diving into those rabbit holes, figuring out more information on those.
Keep me posted, and maybe I'll join you, and
we'll definitely
we'll bring a rope, and we can both go down.
Exactly.
I'm always down. It was so exciting and refreshing, and it was very different from the we heard footsteps. It's just something so unique about being able to explore something a little bit different that still kind of aligns with your passions.
Right. Yeah. What I like to research is how the 3 laws of thermodynamics fit into the paranormal field.
That's cool. I'm down with that. I can get down with that.
Yeah. So that's interesting and Heisenberg's theory. But anyway, that's a whole other show.
I love Heisenberg's. Okay.
and we're over time, but we will definitely have another show where I'll bring Steve back, and him and I and Philip will be sitting there with the look he has on his face now.
With the coloring book. Yeah.
So again, thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Good night.